We're here this afternoon in the Inez Greenberg Gallery at the Bloomington Center for the Arts, and taking a little time to talk to Paul Thissen, candidate for governor, who didn't have a chance to be videotaped at his drinking liberally appearance a couple of weeks ago. So we thought we'd give him a chance to make up for that and speak to everybody on the video. So first of all, welcome, Paul.
Thank you, and I should say I had a really good time at drinking liberally.
Good.
So
glad to hear it. The first question that I would have asked you had I been there at drinking liberally is, in view of the $1 billion budget deficit for the biennium they were looking at, why would you want to be the governor?
I think because exactly that challenge. We have not had responsible leadership in this state for too long. I care deeply about Minnesota and the direction it's headed. You know, I grew up here. My family's been around here for 5 generations. I have 3 kids of my own. And the direction we've been heading is exactly the wrong time. These are really serious times. We haven't had serious leadership in Minnesota, and I think I can bring that kind of serious leadership back to Minnesota to take on the challenges that we have, to orient us toward the future, and to provide some hope and optimism that we can move in a better direction.
All right, great. Tell me a little bit more about how you would solve the budget deficit, or at least approach it.
Yeah, well, I think that we have to take a comprehensive approach to it. You know, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we make government work better, and there's a lot we can do in that area. I think the biggest thing we can do is to empower the people actually doing the work of government on the ground to get their voices heard. They're living in a huge culture of fear over in the state. If we could unleash their innovation and creativity, I think we could do amazing things. And in addition, I think that we have to think about how we continually redesign services, and I've done a lot of that work in the legislature. The second thing we absolutely have to do is get people back to work, get our economy going again, and I'm assuming we're going to talk a little bit about more about that later. We do need to make sure that we make our tax system fair in this state. There is unbelievable frustration right now with Palente's property taxes, and we can do much better than that. Fund things at the state level in a much fairer way, whether it's schools, whether it's our local governments, bringing equity across the state. And the last thing we absolutely have to do is get our health and human services spending under control. It is growing too quickly. It's going to consume not just 1/3 of our state budget, but 2/3 of our state budget if we don't do anything else. But we can do it in smart ways, not what the governor Palente has done, which is to throw people off health care, but to spend more wisely, to redesign the delivery of human services, and to make sure that we are giving people choices with how they spend their money. And in that way, I think we can empower people more and save a lot of money.
Tom Bach came out, I believe it was yesterday, with his proposal to for one way to raise some more money, and that is to expand the sales tax to clothing. There are probably lots of other things that could be done, but first of all, you want to react to Tom Bach's proposal, and then maybe give us some of your own.
Well, first, I will say that I very much respect Senator Bach's willingness to put the discussion on the table, and I think he's provided very great leadership on that issue. This is what I think we need to focus on, or the principles that I would focus on. The first is we have to make sure that we are reducing property taxes as we do this work, because that's where people are frustrated, and it's the least fair tax. I think we need to start with a progressive income tax, and so making sure that the wealthiest Minnesotans pay their fair share is something that we need to do. And if you put it in the context of it being maybe $200 a year or $300 a year to the wealthiest families in this state on average, that's not a big thing to ask of them, I don't think, and is reasonable, especially when you think about what a $200 or $300 cut a month would do to the poorest, most vulnerable Minnesotans. So the equity in our income tax, I do think that we are taxing it. We have a tax system that's 30, 35 years old, and we need to update it. And that would include things like looking at a sales tax. I don't think we should do the clothing sales tax necessarily. I would look at services first. But I do think broadening the base is going to be important. If we need additional resources to do the kind of investments I think we probably need to do in this state. And then the last thing that I guess I would say is we also need to make our corporate taxes much more efficient than they are today. Not necessarily lowering them, but just making them better.
Okay. Now, how would you do that, for example?
Well, I think that we have, for instance, we charge people sales tax in advance and then give refunds to people. Not a very efficient way of running that tax system. We also need to consider that the corporate tax is just passed on to consumers. So maybe there's other ways to have corporations pay their fair share.
All right, back on the subject of the economy and jobs.
Yeah.
What do you think we can do about that?
Well, I think that there are a lot of things we have to think about, and we have to think about it in a short-term perspective and a longer-term perspective. In the short term, I think that we do need to invest our public dollars wisely. A robust bonding bill, and maybe even another one next year if the economy is still struggling. Making sure that we are maintaining public employment as far as we can. Having teachers in the schools and cops on the street. They're spending money in their communities, and that is something that we have to keep a very close eye on. And I also think that the legacy amendment, our transportation investment, all those things create jobs, and we need to make that kind of job number one. In addition to that, though, most of the jobs are going to grow in the private sector. And in the short term, the biggest thing I think we can do is to reduce the risk as far as possible that both small and medium-sized businesses feel and banks feel in terms of lending. And if we were to use the economic developments we're currently giving away in tax breaks to move companies from one part of the state to another, and instead create a guarantee fund that would give both small businesses and banks more comfort that the loans they're making or the expansions they're making are going to succeed, or to reduce the risk at least that people feel. I think that that's a really important step that we could take. And the other things we can do are relatively inexpensive, providing technical assistance, a one-stop shop where small and medium-sized businesses could go for advice to figure out how to work their way through the bureaucracy of state government to get regulatory and permitting done more quickly. In the long term, it's investing in education. It's making sure we fix our healthcare system and take that burden off the backs of employers as far as possible. And it's making sure that our higher ed education system is working closely with employers to make sure we're training the workers that we're going to need in the future.
A couple of the candidates have talked a lot about the green economy. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on that in particular?
Yeah, I think it's a really important part of the future, not only of our state, but our country and our world. There's a lot of advantages that come with it, and I think Minnesota can absolutely be a really strong player in that area, and I'm very committed to do it. And I was one of the early people that pushed for the renewable energy standard back when we were in the deep minority as Democrats, and we're trying to change things. So I've been a strong proponent and long proponent of moving in that direction. But I also don't think we should be putting our eggs all in one basket. We need to think about what our other strengths are in the field of biomedical technology, in the field of food processing, in the field of paper and paper products, where we're leaders right now, and we can build on those bases to do a lot of other things.
We're rolling.
Ultimately, what Governor Pawlenty has done is he has pushed the burden of balancing our state budget into our classrooms, making them more crowded, reducing teachers' flexibility to use new materials and to teach our kids a 21st century education. I have 3 kids in the public schools. I've seen that in my kids' public schools. Parents all across the state are seeing the same thing. So it's, again, a short-sighted decision, and it's, pointing fingers. It's shifting responsibility so he can hold up his hands and say, I didn't raise taxes, and is exactly what we have to stop in the state.
You have anything you want to say in conclusion here, Paul?
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the chance to do that. This is a really, really important governor's race, as everybody who's watching this knows. And the most important thing that we're going to have to do is take on this underlying philosophy that's driven this state kind of to the brink of devastation, and that's this thing that we're all on our own. And we need a governor who's going to stand up and say, let's come back to what Minnesotans have always done and understand that we have some obligations to each other. And that's what I want to do. I mean, whatever the issue is, healthcare, education, transportation, that's what we need to do. The thing that's most exciting to me about how this campaign has gone so far is the reaction people are giving to that, the feeling that what we need in our next Democratic candidate, but not just our candidate, our next governor, is someone who's going to be able to orient us towards the future, to not do things as the status quo, to not keep playing not to lose, to holding on to the things that we've held on to so far, that we've had so far, but actually being willing to risk some stuff and play to win. That's what my campaign is about. People are jumping on board all the time, and I'd love everyone else to join our team, because we've come a long way very quickly, and we're going to continue to move forward, because we really need to and can change Minnesota, and I'm committed to making sure that happens.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye now.